Can you talk about this idea of changing history to make better art?
I would never set out to, with malice, to denigrate anyone. You know, I mean, I think I see it, and I make my own judgments on history because I take responsibility for what I do. I would defend all my decisions on Nixon, all my decisions on the Doors, and I would never try to cross the line, or never cross the line to hurt somebody unless I had my facts.
But are you thinking about story first?
No, I would never sacrifice. No, you wouldn't do that to someone. You're dealing with a real person's life. I mean, to take it and distort it, but you don't ever change what you know to be the truth, ever.
Want to know what really happened? It's not the latex. It's not the stupid prosecutor. The fact of the matter is that the lining in the glove had been cut in some places because the crime lab had taken DNA samples. Before we did this glove demonstration, unbeknown to us, the defense had, Johnny in particular, had handled the glove. What had happened is that I think Johnny tore the lining. There were some additional tears in the lining so that O.J.'s fingers couldn't go all the way up into the glove. What I think happened is that the defense manipulated that glove and so that it did not appear to look as if it fit.
The country was divided about how to look at this case based on their race. And so I think that it is impossible to say that in the end, the jury simply looked at the evidence.
Truth doesn't seem to matter anymore, that the candidates can say anything they want, and even worse, there was no one with the stature of a Cronkite, of a Murrow, of a whomever, to be able to hold the candidates accountable and say, you lied. That's just not true. And no one has the credibility to do that. And that, I think, is a horrible, dangerous situation.
The difference between Murrow and today is that in Murrow's day, it was the journalism that counted, and today it's the performance. Murrow was the best performer ever. I mean, you could not take your eyes off of his eyes. It was magnetic.
It does seem that we're living in a very different time where there's a fractiousness to the political process, an unwillingness for parties to work with each other, and a mean-spiritedness. And I'm wondering whether you've observed this and
Sure.
whether this is troubling to you.
Well, I think the description that you've given of mean-spiritedness is the most accurate. When you have the Republican McConnell's statement early on that his major, prime, almost sole job is to make sure that Obama is not reelected, you say to yourself, that's not what you're elected to serve in the Senate for. What you're elected to serve in the Senate for and in the House is to do the people's business and to protect the United States. Yes, you can be partisan. Yes, you can seek to cause the incumbent of another party to be defeated, but that cannot be your major priority.
One of the big questions I have about the phrase too big to fail and the idea of moral hazard is if you actually truly believe that every single individual on Wall Street was greedy and evil and that's how we got here, you have to believe that in 2004, 5, and 6, the CEOs of these companies, Stan O'Neill, Dick Fuld, et cetera, sat around and said, you know what? Screw everybody, throw caution to the wind. The world is, they're going to save us because we are too big to fail, and we're just going to go for gold. If you actually believe that, I have a bridge to sell you.
Chairman, you're holding back. Tell us.
Sit around talking about we're going to screw everybody. They did it. Doesn't mean they didn't do it. Amount of money that is poured into Washington, whether it's for elections or for lobbying against regulators. I don't want to be too dramatic, but I've been in government for a long time. I loved the United States and working for the government and doing what you thought was right. You really wonder to what extent is the government for sale.
Often your initial sources are people with some kind of a grievance. I mean, you talked about all the president's men, but one of the things that came out about Mark Felt when it was revealed that he was deep throat is that, yes, we can, I think, take it on faith and on the facts that he was disturbed by what was being done to subvert the Constitution, but he was also upset because he'd been passed over to be FBI director.
The same way that, you know, being a gangster was glamorized by those kinds of movies. I mean, what's everyone doing in the audience here today?
Well, Joel thinks they're here to see you.
You're drawn by the glamour of it. We're all laughing at these jokes about the way people were treated and the stuff, and oh, it's a good shtick, and this and the that, and the foxy lady. I mean, it's sick.
Now, frankly, if you're sitting in this audience right now and you can't go to see The Wolf of Wall Street and realize that it's bad, there's something wrong with you. It's honest, you're fundamentally screwed up. It's obvious that it's not meant to. Is some stuff glamorous? Yes. Drugs is glamorous. Money's glamorous. Sex is glamorous. Does that mean it's what you want to do with your life?
I'm very happy I grew up in New York. I think if you grow up in New York, you're 2 steps ahead no matter where you go in the country. There's something about New York. I
think that's still true?
I tell a story. If you're from New York, if you're a D student in New York, you're mayor of Des Moines.
The original correct version is he went to a country club in Hollywood, and he had his daughter with him and some friends, and he was going to go swimming, and as he indicated he was going to, a flunky came over and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Marks, but we don't allow Jewish people in the pool." And Groucho said, "Really? You know, my daughter is only half Jewish. Can she go in up to her knees?"
First of all, it's a Billy Wilder film, and he made it to the United States in time to avoid the Nazis, but his family did not. And he came to America and he made these amazing films in which sentimentality is by and large kept at a very great remove, and in which we're led to understand how human beings do kind of awful things, and yet some of them remain pretty lovable nevertheless.
A lot of people thought this was a very controversial film, and Jimmy himself told me that people objected to his being in it. He said that he got a lot of letters from people who said, you know, here we are, we think we're going to see a Jimmy Stewart picture. And you're up there talking about panties and spermatogenesis and penetration, and we're not going to ever go see your pictures again. I said, well, how did you feel about that, Jimmy? Well, I'd do it again. I mean, a part like that doesn't come along very often.
I'm an actor because I didn't get cast as Cyrano in my the high school play.
Is that right?
That's one of the reasons. I wanted it really badly. I thought it had been promised
This was
to me.
in some Connecticut prep school?
No, it was in a Massachusetts prep school, but it wasn't a prep school.
Yeah. Hey, whatever happened to that guy who got Cyrano?
He became a lawyer. He became...
One time Harry Hamlin was approached and told that a summation that he had given was sort of taken verbatim, that the lawyer took it verbatim and used it for his summation.
and then Harry went home. He thought that was a really neat thing, and he was talking to some people the next day on the set. And then it occurred to him that on the show he lost that case.
We knew we were doing something potent when we were starting this show at that time. Ellen's show was canceled after she came out. And there was open concern by the network at that point that, you know, we can't be too gay. And
they actually phrased it just like
they
that.
said, you can't, yes, no, they said, if you go back and you look at the pilot, 30% of the people who were asked after the fact did not realize that Will was gay after watching the pilot.
Why do we have religion? Because we don't know what's coming and we're afraid of it. Well, why don't you have religion before death, before birth? You didn't know what that was either. The religion comes after the birth because some are weaker than others mentally, and they need a crutch to get through the misery of life, which is misery. And therefore, they invent a mythology that makes them feel good, which is contrary to common sense.
Nobody was tortured. There was a torture statute. It's the only standard that applies to the question of whether somebody was tortured or not. What's portrayed in the film is not what was done by the CIA. Understand, there were 3 people who were waterboarded by the CIA. 3. That's what the fuss is about.
It's a cautionary tale, and you cannot imagine all over the world, wherever I've gone, people have said to me, you know, I saw that movie, and I said to my wife, the wife I was divorcing, take everything. I don't want to do that.
You know, lawyers are the worst clients. Well, two other classes of clients that are worse.
What's the worst? Let's go. What's worse than them?
A psychiatrist and a judge. Those are the two categories that are much worse.
It's practically the only explicitly feminist film that's ever come out of Hollywood, I think. You know, really, when you think about it, either current films or old films, it's all there on the surface. It's not implicit or subtext. But it is about the law in the sense that it's about the double standard in the law and the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, which is being adjudicated all the time, isn't it, in trials?
I would try a criminal prosecution, okay, and the jurors walk in there with this expectation that well, the cops are going to show us how they waved the wand on the wall, and all this evidence came out, and it's clearly him. And so all of a sudden, it becomes very easy for defense lawyers to stand up and say, well, where's the evidence? Where are the fingerprints? Yeah, we have these two people saying they saw him commit the crime, but where are the fingerprints? Where's the DNA? Where's it? And it's not just a matter of, it'd be great if we had this evidence, which is always an argument that was available to any defense lawyer. Wow, we'd really know for sure. But now jurors come in thinking from CSI, that's the way it is. You wave the wand and here's all this evidence. And if the person's there, there's DNA all over the place. Just pick and choose which one you want to take. And I've just seen criminal defendants that were clearly guilty walk over and over and over again because of the expectation the jurors had.
If you want to ask me what do I think was different about Presumed Innocent, it is that the hero is flawed. He has deep moral foibles. He's had a dangerous and, as it turns out, enormously destructive affair. He is not a complete truth teller, and he is not a complete truth seer. That's certainly a different vision of the lawyer than the paragon that is Atticus Finch or Perry Mason, for example.
Can the left recover something of the spine of a Franklin Roosevelt or a Harry Truman who knew that those values we cherish, free speech, provocation, freedom of religion, absence of religion, freedom to insult, that those rights need a stalwart defense, that the answer isn't simply to submit to the totalitarians, whether it's Lenin, Stalin, Bin Laden, or Omar al-Baghdadi? I think that's the question that we are confronted with now.
I am campaigning for a Muslim reformation, and I believe it's underway. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, the way to get there is not going to be through the clerics. Hanging around waiting for Muslim clerics to adapt doctrine, it's not going to happen. It's going to come through a relentless process of blasphemy. Every single Muslim who looks at you and says, I'm offended, my feelings are hurt, you have to say, what hurts your feelings more? The sacred text or human life? This woman who's beaten or the sacred text? This woman who's raped or the sacred text? Human life, human freedom, human dignity matters more than any sacred text. Christians have been through it, Jews have been through it. It's now time that Muslims go through it, and we better stop kidding ourselves. If you want to help, you're going to blaspheme.
We have to stop engaging in magical thinking. The magical thinking is, well, if we just say there'll be sanctions on them, they're not going to do it. The sad fact for anyone trying to fashion policy is that you have to be willing to use force to stop many or to stop would-be genocidal leaders. That's just the reality. The radical thing is the status quo. And the status quo is we sit by and watch as hundreds of thousands and millions of people get slaughtered. And beyond that, many more hundreds of thousands, millions have their lives utterly destroyed by being expelled from their homes into the most horrible of circumstances. That is utterly radical. What is more radical than that?
What struck me is this. If you looked at the exterior scenes, the scenes of the city, it was all modern Berlin. And all the interiors were late 19th century interiors. One of the themes is clearly that the institutions have not caught up with a modernized society.
I mean, there will always be some speech in some circumstance that we won't protect. We don't protect espionage. No one's ever argued that perjury can't be a crime, even though it's talking, if not speech. The villains come in and say, well, all right, now we know freedom of speech isn't absolute. Let's just make it a rule of reason, which is, in effect, that if speech is really harmful to some social interest or other, why don't we let some serious level of constriction of it occur?
When you're talking about suing someone because they intentionally inflicted emotional distress upon you, you're basically saying, I'm suing the bastard because he hurt my feelings. Next, you'll be saying, I'm suing him because he hurt my dog's feelings. What many people forget is we pay a price for everything, and the price we pay to live in a free society is toleration. We have to tolerate things that we don't necessarily like so we can be free. I tolerate Fox News and Bill O'Reilly, the Archie Bunker at Fox, you know. Yeah.
And when I make a speech, if I'm talking about Bush and the war criminals that are putting America in this situation that the historian is going to write, I hope my speech creates some pain. I hope my speech makes the Bush administration feel that they did wrong.
The New York Times has not lost a libel case since the Supreme Court applied the First Amendment to the law of libel in 1964, and it's not settled a libel case for money since 1964. It's a good newspaper, but we probably did some things between 1964 and the present that might subject us to some sort of legal process, or at least ought to put us in fear of some sort of legal process. And sometimes you wonder whether we might not have too much protection.
The Supreme Court's record during this time period was not one of promoting freedom. And so if all you knew about America was watching this film, you would see the court as this bastion of freedom and justice and so forth. And this was really not. It was really the issue, did they prove that these people were born in Africa?
So there was, if you were here, you were illegally here. Right?
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
smuggled in illegally. But
Exactly.
This
And-
point, which is why you're saying this is such a narrow legal
It's
issue.
a narrow legal issue. It's not a grand principle of truth, justice, in the American way.
America is an activity. America must be sustained by active effort by its lawyers and teachers and parents and press and everyone else. And by compartmentalizing ourselves into left and right, we create the opportunity for no accountability, which is exactly where we are right now.